Good morning. Or if you are French, bon matin. If you're Italian, buon mattino. Not so sure about Spanish. I've lost my Spanish a little bit. And my Portuguese. German, guten Morgen. Irish, where's the coffee? Give me a second, I'll be there. I'm just getting all my old man pills. Which one have I left out? This one. Okay. 5 pills every morning. It used to be 6, but I stopped taking one of them. And I know you're going to laugh at this, but I know they like to slip things into the food supply as they dedicate this the errant hair. As they dedicate this society as much as they can to their god Satan. And we've all read about the 2% human meat being found in the fast food industry, especially McDonald's, which is a true statistic, by the way. It's amazing to me that they reported that, and it was barely a blip on the news radar. There is still 2% of human meat in the fast food industry. And that is a huge amount when you're talking about nationwide. That's a lot of people. But I also know they're taking, the elites are taking human blood with other certain substances, let's say, in pill form now. And some of the pills some of the medicine that are in our pharmaceutical industry have what I call a bland description of their contents. They just put the sticker on it, and everyone seems to think that, if it doesn't say on the sticker, then that's not what's in it. They just stick a sticker on it that says what it's supposed to say. There's no way they can be calls to account for it. Once those things have gone out there, you'd have to be a scientist to find out that it's not what it says it is. But I've seen the human pill forms, the human pill form. I've seen those, and one of the pills that I was supposed to be taking looked very, very much like it, and I was wondering where that pill would end up if they put it into our pharmaceutical industry. And so I'm looking at the pill that I was supposed to take, and I'm thinking, no. And I threw one of them away into the toilet about a week ago. And within 10 minutes, and I kid you not, this pill had turned into a huge splotch of blood in the bottom of the toilet. I mean, there's no mistaking what it looked like. It looks like blood with the bits in it. There's no way it looks like what it was supposed to be. I just threw it into the water, come back half an hour later, and the toilet was filled with blood. And I was like, I don't care what it says on the label. Take no notice of the labels. They're just putting these things out there. And I threw the whole jar away. So I'm down from 6 pills to 5 pills. And I'm starting to take myself off the pills altogether. So soon I shall be on 4 pills, and we'll go down from there. But anyway, that was my little that was my moment of interaction with the conspiracy theory become reality. So anyway, here I'm going to read James 5. It's the last chapter in this book. And also today, if you're watching this on YouTube, this is something I once violated my conscience for. I said, because I was saying to myself, I won't ever do that until I hit rock bottom. Well, as a family in the household, we have hit rock bottom. So, and a lot of people have wanted to, a lot of people have asked me to, and I turned them away. And when I was doing better than I am now, people wanted to support the channel. They wanted to support me financially and so on. And I let them do it for a little while. And my conscience was so violated that I ended up, I don't know what I did to raise money, but I ended up raising a bunch of money, and I sent back to every single one of them the money that they had sent me, with an explanation and an apology saying, I'm sorry, I just can't do this. I just couldn't handle the thought of, I have a very difficult time receiving things or anything. And I sent back the money to every single person. And the numbers on my channel, not that I care about the numbers necessarily, I care about conscience, but the numbers dropped massively. You know, which is the old human adage that if you give somebody something, they're going to treat you with suspicion for it. They don't like it. But if you charge them for it, if I give you this bookmark, I don't want your cheap, crappy little bookmark, fine, then I won't sell it to you for $10. $10? I'll take $3. That's human mentality right at the core. If you charge them through the nose for it, they'll want it. But if you say it's free, they don't want it, and they'll treat you with suspicion. And when I returned these people's money to them, for no other reason than it violated my conscience at the time, they treated me with suspicion, and they couldn't stand it. Oh, I don't like him anymore, and left. That's fine, you're welcome to do so. But it was a very interesting and humorous look into human behavior and psychology. So now we're at that point. And that was the point that I said, you know, the Bible says a workman is worth his wages, and so on, things like that. A workman, a worker deserves his wages or whatever, because ministry is ministry. You support your ministry, what do they call those guys? Ministries that you send overseas from your church, etc. That's fine. But I said to myself, the only acceptable solution for ever allowing someone to do something like that is if I hit absolute rock bottom. We did hit rock bottom, and so now I'm going to be working today on setting up the systems in conjunction with my YouTube, that if people want to support the channel, they can do so if they want to, but I'll never ask for it. But just if they want to, it'll be there, and the links will be below the video. Not this video, but other videos in the future. The links will be below the videos in the future, but I'll never ask for anything like that. But I was waiting for this time, but it violated my conscience there because I wasn't in that position. And this is what a bad influence people can have on each other. Every single one of these YouTubers, these Christian YouTubers, guys and girls that I really greatly respected when I was newer to all this than I am now, they all had these multiple links, and I just simply thought that's what I was supposed to do. I thought that, and so and then it violated my conscience. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. Everyone had their little links at the bottom. And it would either be the first thing they talk about on their video or the last thing. And that's the constant handout money, in a hand held out for money attitude, and I really despise that. And the Apostle Paul talks about those who turn God's goodness and His grace into a source of gaining riches from this world. Can't stand it. Don't want it. If you're going to help someone out, that's fine. But this handout mentality, and I began noticing this more and more, and then I began finding out, with time, I began finding out who really believed what, and who, you know what I mean? It was time and experience has provided me the background on a lot of people, and so then I separated myself from it all. And I'm not saying I'm better than anyone else, but for crying out loud, I could name names here, but I'm trying not to. But there's some crazy things going on out there, I just, you've got to watch people very, very carefully. Watch woman 65. She's great on the news, and I recommend her as a news person, but not as a source of truth or information on the gospel. She does quote 1 Corinthians 1-4 every video and so on. But then she has also blatantly said in her videos that we have nothing to do with the Old Testament. No, we're not under the law, but it says we have nothing to do with the Old Testament, and we're not under Jesus' laws at all. We're only under the Apostle Paul's laws. She said that blatantly, and I'm like, what? But, you watch out for things like that, and then it's like, wait a minute, have you replaced Jesus with Paul? Because we are always under Jesus' laws. But she said that, and again, not even a flicker, not even a blink. And there are other things too with other characters, so you get to know them. So I just kind of separated myself from the whole thing altogether, the whole bunch. The only people that I really trust are, of course, J.D. Farag and Dan Bergman and Watchman River. These three men. So, and there's nothing wrong with supporting those ministries. But I'll never make a point of asking for it at all. But people who want to can, and I'll make that available. Not in this video on YouTube, but in future videos. If people want to support the channel, they can do that. That will literally help me continue making videos, because we're at the point where we won't be able to even pay the bills here. So it will help me do that. But God will provide. At the end of the day, I'll shoot up the road to the internet cafe and record up there. So anyway, just wanted to say, all of this. I'm glad I'm down to 5 pills, and hopefully it'll be 4 within a couple of days as I work myself off these things. All right, that's good. Good morning, Nicholas, Karen, and Sue, and everybody else that's here. I'm sorry if I missed your name. Fred, Foy, okay. All right. James 5. Come now, you rich. Every time I talk about something, and I never know what I'm going to read. Yesterday I was talking about those who start fights and arguments, and then James 4 says, where do wars and fights come from among you? And then I'm talking about this unpleasant stuff, and then, come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. I was disdained during those early YouTube years because there was one guy who would come on camera and all he would talk about is his groceries. Okay, you need support for your channel, it's part of, But every single video mentioning your financial needs and and doing an overplay of the thanks for support and so on, but every single video, the same words, it created a really bad effect, and it can bring disrepute upon the message you're trying to share. That's my fear. That's my concern with these kinds of channels. And this, I knew that every time I would turn on this brother's channel, that's what I remembered, because he said it the same thing every single time. Even with Watchwoman 65, the one thing I remember is the one thing that she repeats, which is 1 Corinthians 1-3. Or is it 2 Corinthians 1-3? 1-4. Anyway, one of those. But I remember the gospel part from her, and so when someone constantly repeats something, it repeats inside your head and begins to sink in. And if that's what it's doing to me as a Christian, what's that beginning to look like to the world? So it's if that's the effect it's having on a believer, how bad is the impression being given to worldly people, who then cry out that all these pastors, teachers, leaders, and YouTubers are just after the money. Well, guess what? The whole world is broke. Everybody's broke. The whole system is broke. They intended it to be. This is by design. You're not the only one. Everybody is broke. This is why they designed it and planned it to be. You are broke. You're in good company, because they want to make you so desperate that you will take the mark of the beast when it comes. That things are so broken you cannot live without taking the mark. That's coming. I will be happy and starve before that happens. I will quite happily pass away. I'm not unfamiliar with that, but neither any of us are. God, in various ways and at various times has said to his people, you know what? You need to prepare for death. This is the only nation in the world, by the way, pretty much. We live in a very blessed nation. The mentality that exists here of Americans is very unusual. It's very active. They have a lot of energy, and they export that energy to other nations of the world, and it has done a lot of good. But in many ways, they have the mentality that they have because this is a pre-fascist society. They talk about fascism and so on, like these younger generations, these millennials, and they talk about fascism and communism and socialism, when they have experienced none of these. They literally don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what fascism is, what it feels like to live under it. They've never experienced it. American society as a whole has never suffered under a fascist society. They say they have, but they have never done so. I came from a post-fascist society, and this is why the people that I lived amongst for most of my life, even though I'm American, I have a different accent because of where I lived, but we have a very different mentality for a reason. And this is the only nation in the world whose Christians, and it's not for everybody. I'm not accusing you all, because my father's a very prominent American. He was. But it's the only nation in the world whose churches seemed to have the desire to produce Christians who are of the view that it is their job not to die. It is their obligation is to escape death at any cost, which is a completely different mentality from the book of Acts and Romans. They knew they were going to die. They celebrated it. They called it an honor. And the Apostle Paul, no one looks forward to it per se, but you know what? You know that if you die for the Lord in the Lord's name, you're going to walk into halls of glory, because it's no small sacrifice. They held it on the same importance as life itself. Here, they hold only life as being of importance, and death as a sad occurrence and nothing more. But they don't hold it when it's for the Lord's sacrifice, they don't hold it in the high esteem that the Apostle Paul and the early disciples gave it. It's a very weird mentality. It's hard for us to adapt to and to understand. It is in this pre-fascist society. They've had it so good for so long. They've been through some hard times, the Great Depression and so on. But, and there are some people here of such a quality of mind that they don't need to go through a fascist society to be of the same mentality as the rest of the body of Christ, to be so committed to their Lord. They don't need to prove it. They don't have anything to prove. This isn't about proof. The rapture will come when it comes. And I've literally heard some online, I call them YouTubers, but I use that term too much these days. Just because somebody makes a video, it doesn't make them a YouTuber. Unfortunately, even fools have cameras these days, and they can turn them on and say whatever comes out of their mouth. And I've heard some people come online and say, well, the American Christians haven't suffered yet, so the tribulation isn't coming until they suffer. What are you talking about? This is a schedule. This is not a game of, let's play fair to everybody. They've had an ugly time, so let's stomp all over these people and make sure they have an ugly time. There is a schedule that's coming. If you want a really interesting picture on this, this is an interesting perspective, okay? When Jesus began his time on earth, he never left the land of Israel. So he was here. Then he told his disciples at the end to take the ministry, to take the gospel to Judea and Samaria, and then the rest of the world, which was the known world, and then through the realms of prophecy until his second coming, that it includes the rest of the world, the actual globe that they didn't even know we lived on. But you see, it goes out in gradients, in blessing, but it emanates from Israel, the center of the world, Now, having said that, Jesus also tells us that he who is blessed in this world, he who lives for the riches of this world, what was the expression? He who will be first will be last, and he who will be last will be first. Mix that phrase with pick up your cross daily and follow me, okay? Put these two phrases together. What am I trying to say? In the realms of, through the eyes of kingdom, as I understand it, Jesus' ministry moves out in gradients. Those who have put themselves first in this world, those nations, I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking about nations, will be last. Following this system of gradient, I personally believe, and I cannot prove it, when the kingdom comes, emanating from Israel, the richest nations, starting from Israel first and gradiating outwards, and those nations who were rich in this world, this nation, and the whole continent, as you get further and further away, they will be the poorer nations, and as you move closer and closer in, they will be the richer nations. Look at Africa. Absolutely filled with mineral wealth of every kind, yet the poorest nation on earth. We've even changed the maps to reflect that, to reflect European dominance, that Europe is reflected here, and Africa is slightly smaller down here, and then Greenland is massive up here, Africa and Greenland are the same size, by the way, and Europe is half the size it's depicted on any world map that you can buy today. But it's all about mentality, top to bottom. And you depict Europe at the top, twice its size, etc., etc. You see what I mean? They've distorted the size and shape of the nations to distort the size and shape of your perception and how you perceive. I think in the kingdom we're going to get a lot of surprises as to who the rich nations are, who is rich and who is poor, and the way things work, and the gradient system out from Israel, because we are told in Zechariah that all of the nations in the world will send their wealth to Jerusalem, and she will be so dressed in beauty that she will be unrecognizable. It's beautiful. So this has nothing to do with tribulations or, America's got to have its turn. It will have its turn. But very likely, I hope, we won't be here when it happens. Because if you study the prophecies of Dumitru Duduman and all those other guys that I often mention, whose names I conveniently don't have here, okay, the visions and dreams and the messages that God has given them since 1954, which is when the Bilderbergs met together for the first time to discuss how they were going to destroy the United States, because they absolutely hate everything that it stands for, especially in its Christian heritage. That's when they met for the first time. And a lot of it involves their interaction with Israel. And they have a very anti-Christic demonic system. It's no coincidence that 1954 was the very year that they discovered what we call anti-grav technology. Think of how that can be used for the coming great deception with your UFOs. It's, and from that point on was a 70-year countdown, which I've talked about extensively before in the Genesis timeline prophecies, and the prophecies over the new Madrid fault line, which will split this nation into a 70-year countdown from 1954 to 2024. April the 8th, 2024, to be very specific. Israel also had the same 70-year countdown, leading them to 2017. 1947, the going forth of the word in Isaiah, to 2017, followed by a 7-year period, which leads from 2017 to 2024, which was a period of explicit and deliberate and direct warning to the United States not to pursue the two-state solution, the splitting of the city of Jerusalem and the division of the land of Israel, which God answers in it's what's the name of that book? I forget it. My memory is being played with, and I hate that. And it's God gives very specific warning in Joel chapter 3 about him bringing down into the valley of Hinnom, valley of Jehoshaphat, all those nations that joined in with the splitting of the land of Jerusalem, splitting of the city of Jerusalem and dividing of the land of Israel to seek their destruction. They knew what they were doing. All those who joined in will be judged by God. Joel chapter 3. But it was this nation that spearheaded that campaign and has been doing so since the 1960s. Therefore, they are held chiefly responsible. So you have to explain a lot of coincidences here if you reject all this. How it's 70 years plus 7 for Israel and 70 years for the chief nation, both ending up in 2024. And everything that we described during those years leading up to that date happened exactly so. Everything. And from April the 8th, 2024 onwards, I said from this point on, everything's just going to fall down. And it's going to be, it's going to lead right into there. Including all the blood moons and the solar eclipses and so on that only the US could see. Not Canada, not the Caribbean, not Mexico, not Hawaii. with God's signature, the Aleph, made up of 3 parts, everything in threes, across the nation, passing over 9 cities, the number of judgment. I forget its name. My mind is gone this morning. 9 cities called Nineveh. The same city that God sent his prophet to. And when he tried to run away, he was swallowed by a giant fish. And then sent back to Nineveh. The fish vomited him out onto dry land, which was a huge witness for the people of Nineveh, because the God they worshipped was symbolized by a creature that was depicted as a half fish and half man. So God knows how to send a message. They see this giant whale wash up on the beach, and out of it comes a man, and then the man comes through, walking through the city saying, your city is going to be destroyed unless you repent. And all of this happened April the 8th, 2024, while we were passing through the constellation of the whale. So, I mean, just everything coming together like this. So, there's a lot here. Here we are, 2026, 7 years away from 2033, 2,000 years to the letter after AD 33, when Christ was crucified. So, just all this stuff. And I did all this, and I haven't even got into James chapter 5 yet. Come now, you rich, weep and howl for your miseries that are coming upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you, and will eat your flesh like fire. I've been watching a lot of videos. I've been watching a lot of videos on the Roman Empire lately, and learning a lot, because I love Roman history. I just love it. And it's, in my opinion, as much as people glorify the Romans for all that they did, I think they were one of the most wicked empires that ever existed. Some of the things they did, people today still don't know about. And it's like this question here in James. Your gold and your silver are corroded, and their corrosion will be a witness against you, and will eat up your flesh like fire. You have heaped up treasure in the last days. Indeed, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, cry out, and the cries of the reapers have reached the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. You have lived on the earth in pleasure and luxury. You have fattened your hearts as in a day of slaughter. You have condemned, you have murdered the just. He does not resist you. And I look back at all this history, all the things that we do for what? 2,000 years later, or 1,700 years later after the collapse of the Roman Empire. And you have to look around and say, what was it all for? What was it all for? Where is it now? Why was it valuable at the time when history will look back, especially the Lord who created history, will look back and condemn it? If you knew how worthless it was from the standpoint of the future, why do it now? Because when you do it now, from the standpoint of the future, what does it look like? You'll be condemned, and you'll have to face that condemnation forever. And what about this activity or thing makes that condemnation worth it? You will be forgotten. Your name, one name among millions, among billions. Your name will be forgotten. But all you will know is the ongoing punishment. Why was it worth it? And empires forget to ask this question. They're like animals. They only care about the bowl of food that's immediately in front of them, and that which they want. Therefore, be patient, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rain. You also be patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand. That's the thing that's worth doing. Establish your hearts. That will last forever when he comes to judge and judge righteously. Do not grumble against one another, brothers, lest you be condemned. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. My brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of suffering and patience. A mixture of suffering and patience. Indeed, we count them blessed who endure. Cross-reference this with Matthew 10:22 and 24:13. Indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You've heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end that was intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. The same thing that Jonah complained about when God didn't destroy Nineveh. And so he went and sat under a tree and thanked God for its shade, and then complained when the tree died. And God sent a worm to attack the root of the tree so the tree would die. And God, so to speak, I'm paraphrasing, comes along to Jonah and says, what is your problem? And Jonah says, see, I got swallowed by a fish. I go through I get brought back to Nineveh. I preach this message to this wicked, evil city, and the Jews hated the Ninevites because they were so wicked. I mean, they were wicked, really bad. It says, and Jonah says, I did this preaching campaign. I preached through the city, and you saved them. I knew you would save them. I mean, what's the point? I knew you would show compassion, and I knew you would show mercy. You always do this. Well, what? This is Jonah's response. And God's like, Jonah, there's 36,000 people in that city. Something like that. I want to save them all. If I remove even one of them, that man's universe is all he knows, and it lasts him forever, for eternity. Even one, 99 million might be saved, but if one, it won't make the difference to the one who isn't, because his universe of suffering and judgment is all he knows. There's something like 36,000, 40,000 people in that city, and I want to save them. Your campaign, your preaching campaign was a success because that's what I wanted to achieve. But you're going to complain about a dying plant. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. But above all, my brothers, do not swear, either by heaven or by earth, or with any other oath, okay? But let your yes be yes and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment. Why? Because we don't have covenants anymore. We make promises. And we think they're the same thing, but they're absolutely not. We don't make oaths. But oaths in James's day and in the days before that, for the first 4,000 years of history, oaths were so much more powerful than promises. And the judgment for breaking an oath was heavy. God recognizes an oath for what it is. And amongst the sins that he talks about here in the New Testament, I don't know if they still keep the original language. He says murderers and liars, hypocrites and drunkards and oath breakers. Well, so it's the original translation of one of the passages in here. And so Jesus said it's better for you not to make a promise at all. Just do what you say you're going to do. But let your yes be yes and your no, no, lest you fall into judgment. God takes your words very seriously, even if you don't. You say, oh, but I wasn't serious. And God may be responding to you, but you said it. You may not have taken you seriously, but I did, because once the words leave your mouth, they imprint themselves onto the reality of what you have spoken and that I take notice of. Why is this so important? Because mankind was made in the image of God, and I created man and everything else by speaking. So when you speak, it matters. Don't undermine yourself by saying you wasn't serious. That's just an insult to your own intelligence. I will take you seriously if you go so far as to speak it. Therefore, in Proverbs, let your words be few, for he is in heaven, but you are on the earth. God takes your words, spoken words. Your thoughts, yes, but if it leaves your mouth, then it becomes permanent. God takes your words very seriously. Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing psalms. That's pretty. I like that. I wish we could hear the tunes that the psalms were originally singing. They are all songs. Most of Scripture is songs. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith will save the sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, he will be forgiven. You can, of course, take this to extremes. There are some people who are so committed to their faith that it can overstep the bounds into pride. I've read several stories over the years of people who refused all medical treatment because the prayer of faith will save him. That's what the Scripture says, and they won't allow anything else. Well, God didn't say don't allow anything else. Faith is something that you act on. So if God has made something else available to you, use it. But, and the prayer of faith will save the sick and the Lord will raise him up. It can happen that way. But even when Jesus raised that young girl from the dead, it's like there was a case where Jesus raised a young girl from the dead and all the people were weeping and mourning and so on. And Jesus said, put everyone else out of the room. They're creating such a chaos in here. And he raised her from the dead, Tabitha Kumi, and he gave her back to her parents. And it was Luke, the doctor, who made note of this point, not the other three Gospels. So I find this interesting because it's the sort of thing that a doctor would notice. The first thing Jesus said was, give her something to eat, straight after. The rejection of medicine is not fundamental to a Christian's faith, But believing in faith that this person's going to get well by whatever means that God gives you to use, primarily prayer and His Spirit. And if you have medications, take a medication. That's it. I'm just saying, I've seen some fundamentalist disasters, and there's no need for it. It doesn't contravene the Scriptures. Confess, verse 16, confess your trespasses to one another and pray for one another. Prayer is the number one. That you may be healed. The effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain. And it did not rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months, 10 times and half a time. Constant throughout the Bible as a theme. It's amazing. It did not rain on the land for 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth produced its fruit. Brethren, if anyone among you wanders from the truth and someone turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his way will save a soul from death and cover a multitude of sins. Cover a multitude of your own sins, So, And there James finishes. Bless his heart. No farewell or anything like that, like John, but okay. Or Paul. But, folks, this is the book of James. It is full of really great content. I advise you to go through it, and don't go through it with the fear and the intimidation that some teachers will put on you for it. Because it's all encouragement and it's all empowerment. It's not about making you feel insecure and afraid. Not at all. People who have to use fear to teach the book of James are not teaching right, you know? Yes, there is warning, but not so much warning that we should feel afraid or intimidated, but rather encouraged if we're reading it right. From tomorrow, if the Lord wills, I will be reading the awesome book of Hebrews. And I'm looking forward to that. There is a lot there. Take care. God bless. Have a wonderful and great day. And I've got a lot of things to do here today, online and off. So if you see me making a live during the daytime on Facebook, that's just me working on my sticks in the woodshed, out in the shop, and preparing them, for sale and things like that. So, but it just helps me to have the camera on sometimes. It makes me feel like I got company, even if nobody's there. But that's just what I'm doing. Take care. God bless. And perhaps we'll see each other soon. Keep on looking up, for the Lord is nearer than he has ever been. God bless.